Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah. Welcome to another episode of Haqiqatjou, where we discuss religion and politics, the two least controversial subjects. As always, I am your host, Daniel Haqiqatjou, and I'm back after a long hiatus. I've been working on a very special project, and if you've been subscribed to our newsletter, which has been active for the past month, you know what it is. But basically, I've been working on an important book, writing it. I'm getting towards the end of it, almost completing it. Just have a couple of chapters left to go. And it's a book focusing on basically the U.S. government's attempt to reform Islam. And, you know, that sounds like a very big thing. It is a big thing. But this is what the U.S. government has been engaged in since 9/11. With all kinds of connections to Zionism, of course, in Israel. But this project and who it involves, the extent of it, the depth of it, going into very specific details of the Sharia and Islamic theology, the U.S. government has been heavily involved in this kind of project. And we've heard of the notion of a state building project where the U.S. government, especially in the aftermath of 9/11, wanted to rebuild Afghanistan, rebuild Iraq in the image of a secular democracy, or in the image of like bringing freedom and democracy to these Muslim countries, these backward Muslim countries. But in addition to a state building, they also are engaged in a religion building exercise or operation to actually reform Islam and bring it into line with secularism, liberalism, feminism, etc. And the documentation is all there. The documentation of exactly what they were planning and were implementing with the cooperation of different Muslim governments and their religious institutions and civil institutions. So I've been just in the weeds, you know, down the rabbit hole, looking at all of this, and I'm writing this book to bring it all to light. For the Muslims especially, but just in general, like people who are anti-imperialism or anti-colonialism, they're coming from that kind of background academically in terms of their activism. They'll be very interested to see some of these details. It hasn't been written before in this way. Obviously, there is a lot that's been written on the way that colonial powers manipulated Islam and attempted to reform Islam, propped up certain institutions, dissolved certain institutions in their history. That's plenty of literature on that. It's an entire field of academic research. But specifically post 9/11, there's less that's been written explicitly on that aspect of it, and specifically how the U.S. government has been conceptualizing this and implementing this. Anyway, so that's the book, just to give you a understanding of where I've been, what I've been doing. So hopefully it's beneficial. May Allah accept. And I hope you will enjoy the book when it comes out. You'll obviously be able to access it and read it for free. And probably will have a printed version as well if you want to hold a book in your hand to read. But yeah, that is where I've been. I'm going to continue to be sparse online, at least on YouTube. So just to give you a heads up. But once this book is done, then I'll have a lot more time to actually get not only back to where I was in the past year or two in terms of output, but actually increase the output, hopefully. Because that's the thing with this book. Like, it's been in the background and I've been dedicating time to it, researching it for the past 4 years. And it's kind of been taking up like 25% of my mental energy and time. And once that's completed, inshallah, then I'll gain that 25% and be able to focus more than ever. So make dua that I'm successful, that I'm productive, I get this done, and that I can return, inshallah. So how are you guys doing? I'm looking at the chat and hope everyone is doing well. Hope the sound is well. By the way, if you're interested in subscribing to the newsletter, I highly encourage that. You can go to the link in the description below and you can sign up for the newsletter. It hasn't been active, but now, alhamdulillah, we have some activity putting out it's a weekly dispatch. And if you want like an overarching summary, like everything that's going on MuslimSkeptic platform, when it comes to the articles we publish, the videos that are coming out, even the social media posts that have come out, they get featured and summarized in that newsletter. So it's a good one-stop shop. You can just peruse that. You get the email once a week. You go down the list of content, what interests you. There's a summary of all the content as well, so that, you know, if you don't have time, you can at least get the summary. So I highly recommend that you subscribe. And we don't spam it, like I said, it's just once a week. And if there's any kind of really important announcement that's coming out, then we might have a separate email for that as well, inshallah. And super chats, you know, if you have super chats today, I'm going to be reading them. We'll have a good amount of time to read super chats, inshallah. So please submit, and it supports the show. So what's the topic of today's discussion? There's two main items that we want to discuss. One is the recent U.S.-Iran deal or Memorandum of Understanding, the MOU, that has been signed this week. It has been officially signed today, and it's going to be, you know, there's going to be a signing ceremony on Friday. And this is a Memorandum of Understanding. It has 14 main points, and we're going to go through them. I'll give you my thoughts on it and what it actually means. Some people are happy with it. Other people are not happy with it. They say it's a failure. The plan, like on the side of the Muslim, like the Muslim side, the Palestinian side, they say this is a bad deal. This is not a good situation. And, you know, others are touting this as the biggest triumph ever. Where do I stand? I'll explain that. Basically, I think that it is a win in the overarching war, where you have the U.S. and Israel against the Muslims, like that grand war. I think it's a win, this Memorandum of Understanding, but ultimately it has its flaws, and it doesn't change fundamentally the underlying status quo that's driving the problems for the Muslims. It doesn't really address that, and so you can't say that it's a complete triumph. And it has to do with Palestine, obviously. So I'm going to explain that. I'm going to explain that, inshallah, first thing. And then the second part of the show, I'm going to get into a discussion on the declared war. Mohammed Hijab has declared war on the Wahhabis, and he's set his sights on specifically Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab. And yeah, he's going all out. He's going all out, basically calling Ibn Abdul Wahhab a terrorist, calling Wahhabism terrorism. And yeah, he's not holding back. He's pulled out all the stops, not pulling any punches. And that's why, you know, on the thumbnail I have Mohammed Hijab with his boxing gloves on, because he's ready to rumble. It's ready to rumble. Rumble in the jungle is happening with Mohammed Hijab against the Wahhabis. And it's been a week, and there's been so much fallout from the Wahhabis. They're losing their minds because of what now Hijab has decided to say on Wahhabism. So it's very good to see that. Very happy to see that. Pleasantly surprised. And we're going to look at his comments, what started the firestorm, because he has some extremely notable things to say. And he's come to very interesting conclusions. As you'll see, a lot of his conclusions that he's come to correspond with my conclusions as well. We're in agreement on 90%, 95%, 99% of this issue of Wahhabism. So we're going to look at that. And then we're going to look at the fallout. Already, you know, Rabbi Ferris is, making shots, taking shots at Hijab. And also Adnan, Uncle Retard, also is getting in some shots. So we're going to look at their reaction as well. And also there's a video clip that I was sent of a feminist. She looks like she's South Asian feminist saying some nonsense. Short clip. I'll just react to that. We haven't done reactions like that, like TikTok reactions, in a long time, right? And a lot of you enjoyed that part of the show. So I want to bring some of that back, doing some TikTok reactions. Look at these feminists, and there's been like a increase. Like I've been shocked by kind of the like the amount of feminist content and libtard content coming out on social media. Like, is it because of TikTok? Like, why is there a resurgence? I thought we buried these dumb arguments and this dumb feminist narrative, LGBT as well. Like, there's been a kind of revival in a sense of some of these ideas after 2 years, I think 2 or 3 years of them being kind of shut down. So we're going to look at that, and there might be a need to revitalize or revive this kind of critique of feminism. So we should, get back to some of that on the show as well. Okay, guys, let's start with the Memorandum of Understanding. That's what we want to look at. And here's a summary of it that was posted on Twitter by an account that I follow. He's Iranian, Arya. And here it is. Mehr News has released a short version of the 14 clauses of the MOU that will be signed on Friday between the U.S. and Iran. So here are the 14 points. The permanent and immediate halt of war on all fronts, including Lebanon. So there's a lot of questions about this. Like, this is arguably the most crucial, critical clause of this MOU. And it's the clause that really the entire thing hinges on, the possibility of peace between Iran and the U.S. And recall that, I didn't do a show, obviously, but before this MOU came into being, the context of that is that for the past 2 months, basically, there's been a ceasefire between the U.S. and Iran. They haven't been, actively attacking and firing on each other. There's been this ceasefire, but the U.S. kind of broke that. And it was precipitated on this idea that there was an Apache helicopter operating in the Persian Gulf, and Iran shot it down. It's not clear how it was shot down. Most likely it was through a drone, where this Apache helicopter got taken out. No one died. The crew, I believe, on the Apache helicopter, the U.S. military personnel, they were rescued. But that was a pretext for the U.S. to engage in strikes. Over 50 strikes on the coast, mainly on the coast of Iran, Kharg Island as well. Some targets within the interior of Iran. But Iran struck back. Iran, mainly their retaliation was against this base in Jordan. The Muwaffaq Salti Air Base in Jordan was hit, and their Air Force hangar was hit. It's been reported that some of their fighter jets were destroyed with that strike, and some of the major radar system, the long-distance radar, was also destroyed in Jordan because of Iran's retaliation. So that's what's been happening over the past 2 months, is that it's supposed to be a ceasefire, but Iran, or the U.S., has been poking the bear, basically, has been poking Iran and trying to test the limits of Iran's willingness to retaliate. And Israel has been doing the same thing. Israel specifically has been targeting Beirut and the southern suburbs of Beirut. And what Iran has said is that part of this ceasefire with the U.S. must include Lebanon. And if Israel attacks Beirut, then Iran will respond by attacking Israel. And so Israel wanted to test this. Netanyahu wanted to test this. They launched these strikes against Beirut. Now, keep in mind that Beirut being struck is one thing. Israel is occupying southern Lebanon. Israel has been pushing into southern Lebanon, taking territory, attacking villages, basically massacring civilians. emptying out these villages, literally 1 million Lebanese refugees because of what Israel has been doing this year. And the red line that Iran has drawn is that, well, don't attack Beirut. Don't attack Beirut because then we're going to respond. Is that really enough? Like, is that really enough of a defense of Lebanon? Like, just Beirut is the red line? What about the rest of Lebanon? What about the southern part of the country? Like, all this land that's being taken. Anyway, Israel, it's never enough. They can't just have southern Lebanon under their grip, southern Syria under their grip. Their plan is for greater Israel. They're going to continue to advance, and that includes taking Beirut. And so they've been striking Beirut and taking out a lot of civilians, hundreds of civilians in these strikes. And Iran responded. Iran responded by targeting Israel and hitting some of their bases in northern Israel. Is that enough? I don't think so, but at least they responded. At least they responded, and people online were really cheering for this. They're saying, see, this is a new era. Iran is now responding when another country is getting attacked. Iran is saying that if you attack our allies, we will attack you. And we don't care that you're nuclear-powered, nuclear-armed Israel. We will attack you and we will make you pay for that. So that is something new. That is something that has now been achieved by Iran. And we can always say, is it enough? Is it enough? Is it enough? But the reason that I have this kind of criticism and others are going to be critical about Iran is that Iran is at a strategic disadvantage, a major strategic disadvantage, because it only responds. It only responds to aggression. And if you're only willing to be defensive in that way and not be offensive, like, you're extremely strategically limited, and you're going to be vulnerable to any type of escalation that the other side decides. Whenever the other side decides that you're in a vulnerable position, you're in a point of weakness, then they will strike, then they will escalate. Whereas whenever your opponent, whenever Israel is at a point of weakness, whenever Israel is in a strategically vulnerable situation, you're never going to attack. You're never going to be offensive. You're never going to, even though you have the weapons to do so, you're going to hold back. You're going to holster the gun. This is a asymmetry that puts you at a huge disadvantage, and that's really what the US and Israel are banking on. They are banking on this asymmetry with Iran, and that's ultimately, as I'll explain, that's ultimately what's the problem with this entire MOU. Because it's, you're a sitting duck, basically. You're waiting, you're basically releasing the pressure valve on the US so that they can regroup and wait till the next point of potential weakness to strike. And maybe next time it's going to be successful. It's going to be a death blow. Anyway, so let's continue. The other main problem that people had with this is that it doesn't include Palestine. And so you have people who are online, like our brother Ahmed from Prop & Co. He's saying that this deal is trash, this deal is worthless, and he has his criticism, but specifically he focuses on the fact that in the first clause, it's not mentioning Palestine. Why specifically mention Lebanon but not mention Gaza? Why not mention West Bank? Why is it only explicitly mentioning Lebanon? And I think that's a valid point. That's a valid criticism of the Iranian officials that have, settled on this agreement. And the other side says, well, the defenders of this will say that, well, it's saying all fronts, so that's inclusive of Gaza, that's inclusive of Palestine. Is it? Is it? Because as far as I can tell, Israel is still carrying out strikes against the Palestinians. That hasn't stopped. There's a ceasefire on paper, but we know that Israel doesn't abide by their ceasefires. And so Palestinians are still being slaughtered. There's still a limitation on the resources that they can access. And so I think anyone who is on the side of the resistance against the Zionist project is going to be dissatisfied with the fact that this is not inclusive of Gaza specifically. But does that mean that do I take the position that the entire MOU is a failure, that this is just trash? No, I don't take that position. I think that there are still redeemable qualities here, or redeemable aspects. So let's continue. A U.S. commitment not to interfere in Iran's internal affairs and to respect the sovereignty of the Islamic Republic of Iran. Okay, this is just something symbolic. It doesn't have any kind of tangible, implementation that can be monitored. Obviously, everything that the U.S. and Israel does against Iran is done on the basis of covert operation, their industrial sabotage, their espionage, like all of that, the assassinations that they do, like that's all covert. Like that's not something that, even if the U.S. agrees to it, it's not worth the paper that it's written on. Number 3, the complete lifting of the naval blockade within 30 days. So the naval blockade in the Arab Sea, the Indian Ocean, against any kind of Iranian shipments, oil tankers coming out of the Gulf, the Persian Gulf, like that has had an impact clearly on Iran. It hasn't been a choking or a chokehold on Iran, but clearly it has caused economic damage. And this is something that Iran has wanted to get lifted. And so it's supposed to be lifted today. Pete Hegseth was being interviewed on one of these news channels, and he said that it's immediate. Like the lifting of the blockade is immediate, not after 30 days. It's supposed to immediately take effect. A U.S. commitment to withdraw its forces from the areas surrounding Iran. So what does that exactly entail? It's not clear. Like, commitment to withdraw its forces. Does that mean that the U.S. is going to shut down these Gulf bases in countries like Saudi Arabia, in countries like UAE, in Bahrain? Or does it, what does it exactly mean? Like, is the base in Kuwait going to be, the Patriot base in Kuwait going to be shut down? It's not clear. And obviously, these bases in the Gulf in all of these countries have been significantly downgraded. They've been targeted since the war started, and they've been significantly downgraded. Their radar systems have been destroyed. And, there's a question of how sustainable it is to keep these bases that are going to be vulnerable to Iranian attack. So the question just becomes a matter of, well, if we can just keep the military presence there and make a deal with Iran, then it's not going to be a problem for us to have bases, air bases in Saudi and Kuwait, in these countries, and we can maintain a kind of status quo that existed before. The status quo that existed before the 12-day war last year and or what's being called the Ramadan war that started at the end of February. Like, maybe we can go back to that status quo. It's not clear how this clause, this memorandum of understanding, applies to that status quo. Like, where are we going to be moving forward with these U.S. bases? Like, if we return to the status quo, then the Gulf can be used by the U.S. military and by the U.S. Navy to arm these bases, to move in and out all of this heavy weaponry, all of these missiles that have been used not only against Iran, but against other Muslim nations. Like, if that's the status quo, then that's, a terrible concession. If commitment to withdraw its forces is something superficial, or it's something that doesn't actually mean no more U.S. Army, no more U.S. military in the Persian Gulf. But if that is what it means, then that's a great success. That's a huge win for not only Iran, but for the entire Muslim world. So then the concession that Iran is making in point 5, the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz within 30 days under Iranian arrangements, quote unquote arrangements. So this is what people have been wondering. Is it going to be an opening up of the strait back to the previous status quo, or will there be tolls? And what Trump has said is that no, it's going to be no tolls at all. It's just going to be free access like it was before. So that's what Trump claims. Obviously, he is known to lie about these things. But the Iranian side is saying, no, there's not going to be any tolls, but there are going to be fees. No tolls, but there are going to be fees, just like any other country. Because, technically, according to international law, the Strait of Hormuz is not international waters. The Strait of Hormuz is actually within Iran's territorial waters. Not only Iran, but also Oman. So other countries, when you have this kind of situation where there's a strait, you will have tolls or fees that are charged. And it's usually based on tonnage, like how much weight is being moved across the strait. And some estimates are saying that if Iran is going to start charging these fees, they could generate upwards of $10 to $20 billion per year just on that. Just on charging fees, like Strait Administration, like the Strait Authority. The Hormuz Strait Authority is going to generate Iran $10 to $20 billion per year. So that's a good development for Iran. And it's a big defeat for the U.S. Number 6, the suspension of oil sanctions, petrochemical products, and derivatives, and Iran's full access to the financial proceeds from them. Okay, so the dropping of sanctions against Iran, another big deal economically for Iran. Iran has been sanctioned from participating in the oil market for decades, for over 40 years. And to regain access to that is a potential source of hundreds of billions of dollars. And this is a nightmare. This is a nightmare for the Zionists. It's a nightmare for Israel. Because the whole strategy of Israel, they've had this doctrine for weakening and ultimately destroying Iran. And what has that doctrine mainly consisted of? It's consisted of two main things, which is covert operations, sabotage, assassination, like these limited type of operations to basically cause chaos within Iran and generate popular revolt, like a color revolution. That's one aspect of it. The other aspect of it is isolating Iran economically, starving Iran of economic means so that they do not build the infrastructure and the military capabilities to be able to challenge Israel. That's been the entire strategy of Israel for decades, especially in the past 15 years. And this, obviously, to lift sanctions, to suspend sanctions, then that whole strategy goes down the toilet. Now Iran has access to the global markets in a way that it hasn't had before. It doesn't have to operate on the black market. It doesn't have to operate through proxies. It can actually access all this wealth directly. And what is Iran going to do with that wealth? It's pretty obvious that they're going to develop their military capabilities. In fact, Iran is going to be more interested and willing and enthusiastic, energetic about developing newer technologies, expanding their ballistic missile technologies, their drone technologies, and deepening their bases, basically these missile bases, maybe building more of these underground missile cities, further fortifying them. That's what Iran is going to do if it has access to the global market. So this means a complete failure, collapse of the Israeli strategy against Iran. And so that's why, some of this MOU is too good to believe. Like, it's too good. Like, there's no way that the U.S. actually agreed to this unless there's been a kind of major change, like in the U.S. approach to Iran. Either there's been a major change in the U.S.'s entire strategy towards Iran, which would imply a break with Israel, and that's implausible, or that's hard to believe that the U.S. is going to have a clean break with Israel and pursue a different approach to Iran. Or this is all smoke and mirrors. This MOU is just telling Iran what it wants to hear because the U.S. is planning to violate this agreement immediately, pretty much immediately, before the billions of dollars in oil sales come rolling in. Like, those are the only two options, and the second one seems a lot more plausible, a lot more likely. 7. The requirement for the U.S. and its allies to present reconstruction plans for Iran worth at least $300 billion. So, this, again, sounds too good to be true. It sounds like it's just... Because Iran, if you recall, like, they immediately, after the U.S. realized that its goose was cooked with the Strait of Hormuz, that this is a extremely dangerous situation for the global economy if Iran keeps this strait closed, and Trump and the U.S. immediately wanted to start negotiating and making a deal. They didn't think that Iran had the cojones to actually close the strait, and not only that, but to neutralize all of these bases that they had in the Gulf. Once they realized that, okay, the situation is dire, let's make a deal, Iran said, no, we're not interested in a deal, actually. If you're going to make a deal with us, you have to do all of this. And they gave a long list of demands that they had for the U.S. And one of the things that they demanded was that you have to rebuild Iran. Like, the damage you've caused, there needs to be restitution. You were bombing girls' schools, like, on day one. Like, you're destroying our infrastructure. You are taking out these civilian residential areas. Like, that needs to be rebuilt, and we're not going to agree to anything with you until you foot the bill. So maybe in order to appease that requirement, so that the Iranian supreme leadership with Khamenei, Mujtaba Khamenei, their ability to save face, like, maybe the U.S. just agreed to this, but it's like a throwaway. It's not like, because it's even saying, like, they have to just present plans, present plans to Iran. It's not like they signed the agreement and the $300 billion in cash is delivered on an airplane, in a bunch of, like, a pallet of cash. No, that's not what's actually going on. The U.S. has to just present plans. Okay, well, that's not very definitive. 60 days of negotiations to reach a final agreement based on nuclear issues and the complete lifting of primary and secondary U.S. sanctions, as well as the UN Security Council resolutions and resolutions of the IAEA Board of Governors. So this is, the MOU is supposed to be a framework that leads to an ultimate final agreement that includes discussion of the nuclear issue. Okay, the nuclear issue. And what are the nuclear issues? It refers to uranium enrichment. What percentage enriched uranium can Iran have? What about the stockpile of 400 some kilograms of highly enriched uranium that they already have? What is Iran going to do with that? It seems like what's been agreed, like according to rumors, is that Iran is agreeing that a final agreement, once it's reached, will actually dilute the highly enriched uranium to make it less fissile, less radioactive, so it can't be used in any kind of nuclear bomb. And the question is, how are they going to dilute this highly enriched uranium? Are they going to do it within Iran, or are they going to do it within another country? Because that's what the U.S. was demanding. Like, hand over the highly enriched uranium, we'll take it, and we'll do the dilution for you. And then we'll bring it back. We'll give it back to you. And Iran is saying no to that. We'll just dilute it ourselves. What does that mean? We'll see. We'll see if we can even reach 60 days. Okay. It's highly unlikely, to be honest with you. Iran's reiteration of its commitment under the non-proliferation treaty not to produce nuclear weapons. Okay, like, can make that lip service to that. And the thing is that the parliament, the Majlis in Iran, their last vote on this issue was for Iran to leave the NPT, to actually withdraw from the NPT. That was what they voted on. That's what democracy decided, actually, in Iran. But during this whole war period, Majlis hasn't had a session. They haven't convened for security issues. They don't want to gather in a place and have a resumption of Majlis legislature activity. Just bad news, because the legislature, the Majlis in Iran, like, they are more hard line on some of these issues. And who has taken the reins is Ghalibaf, who is like the head of the Majlis, like he's the equivalent of the Speaker of the House, for example. And you have the president's office with Pezeshkian and Araqchi. Okay, Araqchi is the foreign minister. So they've kind of been, from what I can tell, leading these negotiations with the US. And they're not hardline. They're actually not hardline. They claim that they're just acting and operating under the guidance and the supervision of the supreme leader. To what extent that is true, I don't know. But it's like, that's a lot of the criticism with Araqchi. There's even protests happening in Iran against Araqchi, like chanting against him, calling him a traitor, basically, for negotiating with the United States and coming to an agreement. And I get the sentiment. I get the sentiment that a lot of Iranians have, is that, look, Iran, here, our leader, our supreme leader, was assassinated, like bombed, killed, along with his family and his granddaughter in his home. And we're supposed to negotiate with his killers, with their killers? Is that really, the kind of nation we are? Are we that cucked? Like, that's the kind of attitude. No, we have to fight a war. Like, this is war and we're going to fight to the end. Like, that's the attitude of many Iranians and the hardliners. And what makes it even more so, like, that sentiment increases that sentiment even more so, is, first of all, the US hasn't been negotiating in good faith. Whenever there's a negotiation or whenever there is talks, the US will launch a surprise attack, will bomb different areas within Iran. The US is refusing to keep Israel in check. Israel continuously is attacking Lebanon, attacking the Palestinians, and the US is kind of playing good cop, bad cop, that, oh, we can't control Netanyahu, we can't control Israel, so what they do has nothing to do with us. Like, this is an obvious lie. So the Iranian hardliners are even more annoyed, even more angry with the type of negotiation like this and a deal, an MOU like this, because they say, well, we already have our foots on their necks. We already have the strait. They are desperate for a deal because of the damage that this has caused and will continue to cause as long as shipping is stopped in the strait. And we can withstand the economic pressures much more than the US can. So why are we lifting our feet off of their necks at this time? Like, why? That doesn't make sense strategically. It doesn't reestablish deterrence. It doesn't reestablish a situation where the US and Israel, they won't attack. They won't even gesture towards an attack because they're so afraid of the consequences, because they felt the pain caused by Iran, caused by closing the strait. So this is the criticism of this entire arrangement, all these negotiations, is that this is not going to really fundamentally alter the calculus of the United States, and more importantly, it's not going to alter the calculus of Israel. Israel hasn't been made to suffer any consequences, major consequences, for its naked aggression towards other countries. And if it doesn't suffer any consequences, it's not deterred, it's going to continue down the same course. Okay. Number 10, during the negotiation period, the U.S. has committed not to add to its forces in the region and not to impose any new sanctions. Okay, again, this is lip service. The release of $24 billion of Iran's frozen funds during the 68 period of final negotiations. Half of this amount must be made available to Iran before the negotiations begin. See if that happens. It should happen like soon. Half of $24 billion should come into Iran's hands, but we'll see if that actually plays out. the formation of a supervisory mechanism to implement the agreement. It's probably, Qatar and Pakistan as mediators. Like, what other kind of supervisory mechanism would Iran agree to? And it's like supervision that has no force, like inability to actually enforce anything. The final agreement will be approved through the UN Security Council. Final negotiations will not begin before half of Iran's frozen funds are released or Iran's oil sanctions are suspended and the naval blockade is lifted. The final agreement will be limited only to the fate of enriched materials and enrichment, sanctions relief, and the program for rebuilding Iran's economy. Discussions about Iran's missile program and support for resistance groups have been definitively removed from the agenda. So, like I said, I think there are good aspects of this memorandum of understanding. There are good aspects to this deal, but it's designed, like Iran has structured in a way so that it yields immediate benefit for Iran. That makes sense. Like, that makes sense for releasing of the pressure by opening up the Strait of Hormuz. But the thing is, I don't think it's enough. Like, you didn't get enough out of that initial deal. And I think you had enough leverage to demand more immediate results. Because if you anticipate that the US is going to violate this agreement, or Israel is going to do something to make the agreement untenable within days, if not weeks, if not days, then you want more upfront than just, 12 billion being transferred, right? 12 billion, and what else? Like, oil sanctions are suspended. Okay, they can be suspended for a minute and then they're brought back on. Sanctions are brought back on. So, like, what actually is Iran getting immediately? Like, just for signing the paper? Very little. Very little. And in return, they're opening up the strait. Now you could say that, well, Iran can just close up the strait immediately as well. Iran can just close up the strait, and but that's more difficult for Iran to do. They're going to face more pressure in order to do that. Then the U.S. feels pressure in violating its agreements, which it does all the time. So, yeah, I think that clearly the United States failed. Their entire operation was a failure. They were not able to do regime change. That's what their goal was with this entire war. They failed. They wanted to turn Iran into another Syria. They were hoping that by taking out Ayatollah Khamenei, that would be the end of the Islamic Republic, and it didn't happen. And then they took punitive measures to bomb Iran, kill thousands of civilians, damage the infrastructure of Iran, but it just wasn't enough. So, no doubt about it, the U.S., like, the fact that this memorandum of understanding exists is a clear sign that the U.S. was defeated, at least in this round of the larger war, and Iran was victorious. But this doesn't really go far enough. This doesn't go far enough in solving the overarching problem, which is Israel's plans, Israel's greater Israel plans, Israel's aggression towards its Muslim neighbors. That's the bigger problem. The question of Gaza, the question of the West Bank, like, those things have not been addressed or solved. And the thing is that the Strait of Hormuz, maintaining that stranglehold, basically, that was a path. That could be a path towards resolving some of these issues. Being more aggressively degrading and dismantling the military presence within the Gulf. That could have been pursued more aggressively by Iran. And, I mean, again, don't get me wrong. What they did was amazing, unexpected, historical. One for the history books, no doubt about it. But you always can't help but wonder, like, what could have been? Like, what if they had just stayed the course? Like, what if they had just been a little bit more offensive as opposed to reactive? those questions remain. And it's easy to be a backseat driver, a armchair quarterback, or whatever the expression is. But yeah, I mean, there are other analysts who agree that there's kind of a lost opportunity. And again, you release the pressure, and the U.S., because Israel and the U.S. are the aggressors, because they're looking for any opportunity, any weakness, any situation that they can exploit, it's just a matter of time before there's another round of war, another round of attack. And maybe next time Iran won't be as prepared. Maybe next time Iran won't have the internal coherence, the internal preparation, like making sure that there's a clear chain of command, so that if the top brass gets assassinated, you have operations that can continue without complete upheaval. Like maybe next time there won't be that situation. And we're looking at, like, Israel is looking at a time scale of years, even decades. So to what extent is Iran looking at that time scale? I'm sure obviously they've been preparing for decades, building these underground bases, developing their hypersonics, developing their drone program, their naval program. So they have that preparation. What is the next step? That was preparation for an inevitable all-out attack by the US. So that happened. Now what's the next step? What's the next? The proximate or immediate goal of survival has been achieved. Now what? Are you going to continue to exist in this subsistence way, on the brink of economic disaster, on the brink of economic collapse? How much do you trust the US to abide by its promise of sanctions relief? Yeah, these are open questions. So we'll see. We'll see how long this ceasefire lasts, if there will be a final agreement, what will be the terms of that agreement, and if Palestine is going to be more explicitly included. Again, I'm happy to see that Iran survives, but others are not really so fortunate. The Palestinians are suffering. They continue to suffer. And as Muslims, we want a solution to that problem. That problem is symptomatic of the larger malaise in which we suffer. So I hope that if Iran claims to be standing with the resistance, then Palestine needs to be included, and there needs to be action that is going to move towards a solution for that. People will say, oh, well, what about the rest of the Muslim countries? What about all these other countries that are in the Gulf, not only Arab countries, but other Muslim countries as well? Where's their contribution? Yeah, I mean, it's non-existent, it's relatively non-existent. They are not willing to provide any kind of force, any kind of weaponry. It's just Iran and its proxies. And a lot of these countries are proxies for the United States and Israel. A lot of these Muslim countries are proxies for the United States and Israel. So, yeah, it's not a comparison with other Muslim countries. It's kind of unfair that we hold Iran to that standard. But nonetheless, if you want to be in that position and praised, then, you have to take the criticism as well. Okay, now let's go to our second topic, Mohammed, hijab, and the Wahhabis. The war that has broken out between hijab and the Wahhabis. But before we get to that, I will look at your super chats just to take a pause, see what you guys think of the Iran situation. Lord Meislin, good to see you, bro. When I saw the notification for Haqiqatjou, I almost cried out of joy. Good to have you back, brother, and with such a fire episode topic. Thank you, bro. Good to see you. Thank you for your super chat. Jalaluddin Rumi, good to see you, bro. The show is back. Let's go. It's nighttime here, so I might fall asleep. We'll tune in later in the morning, but very nice to have you back, bro. Appreciate it. Thank you for your super chat. Masari says, kind of unrelated question, how is a Khalifa chosen and who is qualified to choose? Real examples in today's day and age, like what is the standard? How do we make sure that it's upheld? You want me to like give you real examples? Oh, I think that I actually think that so and so should be Khalifa. Yeah. Yeah, Imran Khan should be the Khalifa. Let's go with Imran Khan, or let's go with Khamenei. Yeah. Let me give you, no, actually Jolani should be the Khalifa. Let's give some real world examples. No, yeah, so it's really off topic. Thank you, Parviz, for your super chat. Abdullah, okay, this is about hijab, and we'll get to that later. Ma says, I missed you, man. Definitely getting physical version of your book. Thank you, bro. Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay. So let's get to the war on Wahhabism, the ongoing war. And then I'll read the rest of the super chats at the end. All right, so Hijab put out this video, Ibn Taymiyyah versus Ibn Abdul Wahhab. And he's giving some lectures at Sapiens Institute. And I guess this topic came up. And so this was clipped. So let's watch this and react.
Ibn Taymiyyah, and who was obviously instrumental in the formation of the current Saudi state. And this is a very important consideration, by the way, that him and Ibn Saud actually teamed up together and had an alliance that...
How's the sound, by the way? Is the sound okay? I want to play it and then you can't hear anything. Does it sound good? Let's put a 1 in the chat. Okay. Because I haven't been streaming in a while, so the audio technical aspect might have been degraded. Might have been sabotaged. Maybe it was the Zionists or maybe it was the Wahhabis. They sabotaged my sound system. Now you can't hear my reaction or the video. Okay.
Essentially formed the current state of Saudi Arabia, all right? And so what's important to note is that sort of after that alliance until, let's say, throughout the 1800s, where there was also what Western historians refer to as the Wahhabi Ottoman Wars. I don't know if you've come across that, but obviously the Ottoman Empire and this particular group of people in Najd went to war together against each other. So this is part of the reason. But part of what informed the movement and formed that behavior was the views on takfir. Okay. Now, no matter what someone wants to say, it's intellectually dishonest to equate the views of Ibn Taymiyyah with the views of Ibn Abdul Wahhab when it comes to takfir. It's completely dishonest, because I'll tell you why. I'll give you some evidence with this, right? Ibn Abdul Wahhab, for the most part, even most modern day Salafi scholars will say that he did not believe in a concept called al-'adl bil-jahl. There are 3 things in particular that Ibn Abdul Wahhab was very strict about, which are basically incommensurate with modern Salafism, which is, by the way, another repudiation of modern neo-Salafism, because we said that they're mixing ideas which are not actually congruent with each other. One of those ideas was istighatha. We know what that is, where people would call to the Prophet, Ya Muhammad, Ya Ali, in whatever form, okay? And there's a question of, is there other Jahl or is there other Jahl among the sort of Salafis? Are these people to be excused or are they not to be excused? That's one question. The other question is to do with tawalli.
So, Udhr bil Jahl, for those of you who don't know, it means excuse of ignorance. Are you going to give people the excuse of ignorance? or you're going to just say they have no excuse, and therefore if they believe certain things, like they believe in istighatha, that they're kafir, and you takfir them, and then their blood becomes halal. Okay? And this was critical. Like, this was critical for Wahhabism. It was critical for the political project of Ibn Abdul Wahhab and Ibn Saud, his partner in crime, Ibn Saud, the warlord, okay, the forefather of what became the Saudi state and the Saudi clan, okay, of terrorists, basically. Like, what was critical to that project was that you deny udhr bil jahl. Because someone could say that, okay, if someone is a Muslim and they have a kufr belief, they have a kufri belief, but they're just mistaken. Like, they're just mistaken, or they're ignorant. They have some excuse. So they're still Muslim, but they are like a deviated Muslim. Right? This is the excuse of ignorance, udhr bil jahl. And when it comes to Ibn Taymiyyah was really insistent on giving others the excuse of ignorance, and he really expanded the concept of udhr bil jahl in ways that hadn't been thought of before, prior to him. He gave more excuse, like more of a reason not to takfir other Muslims, even on the issue of istighatha. On the issue of istighatha. That is Ibn Taymiyyah. Ibn Abdul Wahhab, that's not going to work for Ibn Abdul Wahhab. It's not going to work for the Wahhabis, and it's not going to work for Ibn Saud, because you want to take land. You want to invade and kill and take territory. And in Islam, you can't do that to other Muslims. You can't do that to other Muslims. That kind of aggression, you can only even start to justify if they're kafir. And so it becomes very critical to takfir them. But how can you takfir them? Maybe they have an excuse. Like, maybe they're doing istighatha, which, if you take Ibn Taymiyyah's position, you consider istighatha, doing that, this is shirk. You're committing major shirk by doing istighatha. But that doesn't render them automatically as kafir. So you can't just takfir them. They have the excuse of ignorance. What Ibn Abdul Wahhab had to do is make the extra move of saying, no, they don't have udhr bil jahl. No, they don't have this excuse. Yes, they are kafir, and therefore, yes, we are justified in attacking them and killing them and enslaving them and taking their women and children. That is the whole necessity of negating udhr bil jahl that Ibn Abdul Wahhab does. And we talk about this in the Wahhabism documentary, if you haven't seen it, on the channel. Over 500,000 views on that video. But the point is that udhr bil jahl is one of the big differences between Ibn Abdul Wahhab and Ibn Taymiyyah, and it's because of this political dimension of Wahhabism. And what the Wahhabi reaction, by the way, how the Wahhabis respond is like, no. Ibn Abdul Wahhab does give udhr bil jahl. Ibn Abdul Wahhab does excuse for ignorance. See, here's a quote right here. And, you know, that quote that they often cite, I put it in the documentary because I know that's they're so predictable, like, you know exactly what they're going to respond with. And that quote, okay, fine, like, you have that quote where Ibn Abdul Wahhab indicates that there is excuse for ignorance, but here are 10 other quotes where he denies that they have any excuse of ignorance. Okay, so weigh the one quote with the 10 quotes. Okay, fine. We'll weigh the quotes, and then we can say that you have to reconcile the quotes. You know, this is what the defenders of Ibn Abdul Wahhab say. Oh, we have to reconcile. And your justification or your interpretation that he denies udhr bil jahl, that's a leap of logic, and it's not justified because at best he's equivocal, at best he's ambiguous, as far as the texts are concerned. The response to that, the response to Wahhabis there, is to say that, well, actually, we don't have to just limit ourselves to Ibn Abdul Wahhab's writings. We can also look at Ibn Abdul Wahhab's actions and the actions of his followers, his closest followers, and his allies and his partners like Ibn Saud. What did they do? They went and they raided and they killed and they massacred and they took women and children as slaves in these areas that are Muslim. Like, they've been Muslim for hundreds of years, these villages in Najd and beyond. So the actions that were taken by the Wahhabis, that gives you the definitive interpretation of Ibn Abdul Wahhab's words. And the definitive interpretation is that he doesn't give the excuse for ignorance, because he just mass takfirs and calls for jihad against other Muslims, including the Muslims of Najd, okay, before the Wahhabis took over Najd, took over Riyadh, and the Muslims of Hijaz, the Muslims of Ahsa, the Muslims of Iraq, the Muslims of Sham, the Muslims of Egypt, and the Ottomans. All of these groups that were mass takfired, doesn't give them any excuse for ignorance. Anyway, that's a big difference than from Ibn Taymiyyah.
Or allying themselves with the disbelievers. And Ibn Abdul Wahhab had this very staunch view when it came to that if you allied yourself with a disbeliever, then it makes you a disbeliever yourself. Okay. And the third one is al-hukm bighayri ma anzal Allah, or a ruling by what Allah has not revealed. And Ibn Abdul Wahhab had a very staunch view on that. Okay. And you can just look at his works and, you know, he had a very staunch view on that. So the question would be...
That's actually one of the areas that Ibn Abdul Wahhab and Ibn Taymiyyah are aligned, actually, is the issue of, making rulings on the basis of other than what Allah has revealed. Okay, so this is very relevant. Like, if you have a legal system and a law system, like you're the hakim, you're the ruler, and you are enforcing laws that are part of like some secular legal code, or are part of like a Christian legal code or a Jewish legal code, you're not actually implementing the Sharia. Ibn Taymiyyah takes a very harsh view on that. He said this is not only it's kufr. Yeah, other scholars had said historically that this is kufr, or this is kufr duna kufr, like the statement of Ibn Abbas. It's something that makes you a fasiq, or makes you a deviant. But Ibn Taymiyyah takes it a step further and says, no, you are committing kufr and you are a kafir. And he actually made takfir. Like the one issue that you see Ibn Taymiyyah really making takfir on is this issue of ruling by other than what Allah has revealed. And he directs that takfir to the Tatars. He directs it towards the Tatars, like this other group that had become Muslim, but they were applying a kind of Mongolian legal code and mixing it with Islam. And Ibn Taymiyyah takes a big issue with that and writes about that and takfirs on the basis of that. And Ibn Abdul Wahhab is in agreement there. But this, what does that imply? That implies that almost all, if not all, of the current day governments in the Muslim world, they are kafir. They are kafir because they are implementing their legal codes have been secularized to a certain extent, or they're not fully applying the Sharia. They're not actually applying the hudud, for example. And so by that standard, these are kafir governments. Who has that position? It's ISIS. That is the ISIS, that is the Daeshi position. So they're following Ibn Abdul Wahhab on that, and Ibn Taymiyyah also has that position.
Beg itself was, if Ibn Abdul Wahhab was alive today, what would he make of the current Muslim states? So how would he designate them? And you couldn't argue that he would designate them as acceptable. He would make takfir of all of them. He would consider them all to be non-Muslims because they are doing tawalli, they're doing al-hukm bighayri ma anzal Allah, and he did not believe in al-Bajjah. So the idea that the Neo-Salafi movement, I was trying to tell us khuruj al-hakim and all this kind of stuff, it wouldn't be applicable to Ibn Abdul Wahhab. He would say this is not applicable. It's only applicable to Muslims. And these guys are not Muslims. So the Najdi movement is not the same as the Neo-Salafi movement.
So what Hijab is saying here is that Ibn Abdul Wahhab, if he were here today, all of these Gulf governments and all Muslim governments, he would takfir them. He would takfir them because of this principle. They are ruling by other than what Allah has revealed. And there's no other bajal. They have no excuse. Therefore, they're all kafir. And, he would declare jihad against them. Okay, and that's what ISIS does. Like, that's what ISIS does. And, ISIS uses terrorism, like this kind of like bombing a masjid, bombing a market, like these terror tactics. Okay, so no, I don't know if hijab would say that Ibn Abdul Wahhab would endorse those specific tactics, but the point is that he would mass takfir these governments. As for me, I'm not sure that that's the case, because when it comes to Ibn Abdul Wahhab, like, yes, it's true, he has this kind of lunacy towards mass takfir, not giving the excuse for ignorance. Granted, of course, I agree. The historical record is clear on what he was supporting and what he was promoting. But to truly appreciate Ibn Abdul Wahhab's mindset and his thought, like, you have to not only look at the takfir issue, you also have to look at his relationship with Ibn Saud and the Saudi family after Ibn Saud, Muhammad ibn Saud, and after his clan. Like, the relationship of the Wahhabis with that clan was a very special relationship that is another very important aspect of Wahhabism. And so that's why I say that Ibn Abdul Wahhab was the original Madkhali. Like, when it comes to devotion to Saud, Ibn Abdul Wahhab was the originator of that. Like, to make a kind of religious connection, like connecting religion with politics, and specifically loyalty to a particular warlord or political leader, Ibn Abdul Wahhab originated that in that context in the 18th century. So you have to, if you're going to project Ibn Abdul Wahhab to present day, take him from the 18th century and bring him to the present day, don't just project the takfirism. That's one strand, yes, but also project his this kind of loyalty and obsequiousness to Saud. You have to have that component of it as well, projected as well. So it makes it a little bit more complicated. But both aspects, like, not only like the intellectual inheritors of Ibn Abdul Wahhab is not just ISIS, it's also the Madkhalis. Like, the Madkhalis also have a valid claim to be following Ibn Abdul Wahhab closely and obsessively, loyally, as ISIS does. They both claim to love Ibn Abdul Wahhab, by the way. Like, if you didn't know, like, if you don't know these details, go watch the Wahhabism documentary on our channel. But the ISIS, Daeshi literally will teach the books of Ibn Abdul Wahhab, and they claim to be his true followers. And the Madkhalis likewise, the bootlickers in the Gulf, literally, in Riyadh and elsewhere, they also are claiming to follow Ibn Abdul Wahhab to the letter, including the loyalism to the ruler aspect. So yeah, that's what I would mention here as an addition, like as a supportive point to what hijab is describing.
They're closer to the Takfiri groups, the ones that you saw in Syria, for example. They were more faithful to Najdism than current neo-Salafis are. All right. And in Saudi Arabia, like, for example, Ibn Baz, famous scholar in the 90s, who made a very famous fatwa of America being able to position themselves in Saudi, which was very critical. A lot of people are critical of this fatwa. That
for the Gulf War, for the first Gulf War, the U.S. Army to build bases in Saudi to launch attacks against Saddam. That's the first Gulf War in 1990 and 91.
His teacher essentially had completely different views on these issues, on Abu Jahl and Hukm Ghirban Zallan. He would designate certain peoples and states and stuff to be disbelievers. So, he was asked about this, Muhammad ibn Ibrahim, and he was asked about his teacher, and he said, what do you think of that? And he said that, my teacher was wrong about this. So Ibn Baz acknowledges the differences, and he actually repudiates them. That's one aspect. So the time of Ibn Baz and Ibn Uthaymeen, and Albani was the most lenient when it comes to these matters. So much so that he was accused, wrongfully so, of irja and all these kinds of things. That he was somebody who was a murji, or the person, it's a different issue, right? But putting that to the side, the modern Salafi scholars from the 80s and 90s, and up until this day, Fawzan and these guys, like, if you read their books, right, you would think they're Najdis, but when implementation, they're the least Najdi you can find. And this thing confuses people, because on paper you should be making takfir of this state and that state and these people and those people, but in reality you're telling us not to do khuruj on these ones and you're telling us to be obedient to these ones. That's what's caused a lot of friction among different groups, claimants of Salafis. Some people call them Salafi jihadis versus the quietists. This is how like the Westerners divide the different types of Salafis, etc. Right? In the modern.
Yeah, the problem is what created this divide is that you had so much of the Saudi royal family like becoming more and more entrenched in the West and being more and more under the control of Western powers, namely the United States and increasingly Israel, and the US increasingly making demands, and the Saudi government also being afraid, like being afraid of, for example, the Sahwa movement, which is originating, their background is Salafi, obviously, but they also combine Ikhwani elements. And they were very angry about this fatwa from bin Baz opening up Saudi Arabia for the US military bases. Like the Sahwa movement and these scholars, they're worried that they're going to revolt. They're going to overthrow the Saudi royal family, depose them, like a coup basically taking place. And they became and especially worried. Why? Because of what happened in 1979. Two things happened in 1979. One was the Iran Revolution, the Islamic Revolution, where you have a king, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, being deposed, okay, being deposed by an Islamic revolution, okay, and so the king, the Saudi king, is worried about a similar thing happening to him and his family. And then also you had this invasion, or not invasion, but you had this siege of the Haram. You had an actual militant group. Okay, these were people who claimed to be following the Mahdi. Okay, Imam Mahdi. They believe that the Imam had arrived. Imam Mahdi had arrived, and they're his followers, and they took over the Haram and basically took the Haram in Mecca hostage. And this also freaked out the Saudi royal family, the kingdom, and they needed to get the help of the French. The French had to come and use paratroopers to retake the Haram, and they did it like, because this was a dilemma. How do you retake the Haram without bloodshed, like without sending in commandos to be gunning down, like have a gunfight in the Haram in Mecca? So they had like this solution of, we're going to flood the Haram, like the masjid, we're going to flood it, and then we're going to electrocute it. We're going to electrocute these militants. That's what they did. So these things were really freaking out, starting in 1979. Then in 1990 with the Gulf War, you have increasing alignment and increasing Western control of Saudi Arabia, and then that leads to liberalization. And so then you're going to diverge. You're going to have these what the loyalists, okay, if the Saudi government and the royal family is going to be staunchly like pro-Sharia, anti-secularism, anti-liberalization, okay, then it's easy to be a loyalist to that. It's like easy to maintain consistency as a hardline fundamentalist Muslim, takfiring everyone, you know, and you're loyal to a government, and the government happens to be very consistently pro-Sharia, implementing the Sharia. You know, women can't drive, women have to wear hijab, they can't show their face. You know, we're not going to have movie theaters, we're not going to have like nude beaches like there exists in Dubai. Like we're not gonna have alcohol. We're gonna be strict applying the Sharia. So we're theologically consistent. We're, in terms of fiqh and legal implementation, we're consistent. But then if your country starts liberalizing, the rulers start liberalizing, they start adopting these kinds of secular provisions, they stop implementing the Sharia, they stop implementing the hudud, then you create a weird dichotomy. Okay, so you're going to be like hardcore takfiri when it comes to certain theological issues, but when it comes to applying the law, you're going to be like a liberal. And we have to be loyal to that? Like, yeah, we can't criticize that? Like, that's bizarre. Like, that leads to schizophrenia. Like, you're suffering from a kind of cognitive dissonance if you're trying to reconcile these two opposites. So that's what hijab is referring to. And that's why since the 90s, like, you had to have a Madkhali movement. Like, you had to have Rabi' bin Hadi al-Madkhali, okay, that was picked up and promoted by the Saudi government, because what did Rabi' say? Rabi' says that you can't criticize the ruler. You can't, if you criticize the ruler, that's khuruj bil lisan, and you're no longer Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah. In fact, you are a Khariji, and the state is entitled to kill you. That's what Rabi' says. And so they promoted him. He became, faculty at Islamic University of Medina, heavily promoted, obviously. So that's that. The Madkhali movement is a reaction to the Sahwa movement, a reaction to even the Islamic Revolution in Iran. So yeah, it's a very fascinating history. Stuff that I've been learning a lot of over the past 2 years.
One day. But Ibn Taymiyyah was not like Ibn Abdul Wahhab in the matter of excuse making. I'll give you one clear example of that. Ibn Taymiyyah, one of his interlocutors was a man called Al-Bakri. Okay. And they were going back and forth on the issue of al-istighatha. Now, Ibn Taymiyyah, by the way, has, on theoretical level, quite similar view to the Najdis on istighatha, but there are some key differences. For example, in his book Iqtidat Sirat al-Mustaqim, he says that if someone does istighatha in the site of the grave, so someone goes to the grave of the Prophet and says, "Ya Muhammad, yeah, such and such," and he believes that Muhammad sallallahu can hear him, etc., and he believes that Muhammad sallallahu will present that information to Allah, Ibn Taymiyyah does not consider that to be shirk. He considers that to be bid'ah. He mentions that in Iqtidat Sirat al-Mustaqim clearly, and I don't think there's much controversy about that. Yeah, from all the people I've spoken to, that's a fairly established position, which means there's a difference of opinion among Ibn Abdul Wahhab, theoretical difference of opinion, and Ibn Taymiyyah on what constitutes shirk in istighatha. That's a fair thing to say. There's more overlap than there's a more theoretical overlap than there is a theoretical discontinuity, but nevertheless, that's important to mention. But then when it comes to implementation, there's a huge overlap. So, for example, there's a huge discontinuity. There's a completely different approach, because Ibn Abdul Wahhab did not believe al-'adl bil-jahl. He believed that someone calling out to whoever it may be, this person is apostate. He believes he's now an apostate. That's what he believes. Ibn Taymiyyah didn't believe that. Al-Bakri, who Ibn Taymiyyah wrote a book called Al-Raddu al-Bakri. He actually wrote a book on him. Yeah, Al-Raddu al-Bakri, the response to Al-Bakri, a refutation of Al-Bakri, a refutational video. Yeah, Al-Bakri was accused of certain things from the state, and he was a fugitive. And despite the fact, by the way, Al-Bakri responded to Ibn Taymiyyah, made takfir on Taymiyyah, because he doesn't believe this. That's how far he went. He said, "You don't believe in it? You actually left Islam." Ibn Taymiyyah doesn't make takfir of Al-Bakri. Not only that, he actually helps him escape from the authorities, and he hosts him in his house. So you can't tell me he had the same view as Ibn Taymiyyah or Ibn Abdul Wahhab when it comes to al-'adl bil-jahl and these things, to the point where the early Najdi movement, and you can read this, Tarikh Najd, by Ibn Bishr. This is a famous primary source 2-volume work. Yeah, Tarikh Najd by Ibn Bishr, 2-volume work, and you can see what they're doing. Yeah, in their early days, they're designating people in the Najd. They're designating them as disbelievers. Okay, they're saying these guys here are disbelievers, these guys here are disbelievers, because of al-istighatha, and they are saying it's okay to take their women and children as slaves. You cannot compare this behavior, which would be unacceptable to anybody today, with the behavior of Ibn Taymiyyah. So the fact that there's some people that kind of combine them together and say, like, I follow this and that, these two people would differ with each other quite heavily on these matters. Okay. And the Najdi movement is a movement characterized by takfir, by actual implementable takfir, because of issues of those 3 issues in particular. الاستغاثة, التولي, and الحكم بغير ما أنزل الله. The عذر بالجهل issue, or the excuse making situation for the early Najis, was very low. And they actually executed people because of this. Okay, they had beliefs where they would execute. Now we are people that believe in difference of opinion, but I'm sorry to say, but when it comes to killing people now, this is where we have to draw the line. And that's why early Najdism is very indefensible. To the point where if you ask somebody who actually defends Najdism, if somebody went to Pakistan today, okay, he says, I'm going to implement the Sharia, I'm going to do this, and he goes to the different villages, he goes to the Brelvis and he starts killing them and taking their women and children as slaves. What would you say about that person? As a Salafi, how would you designate that person? If not a terrorist that needs to be themselves punished, you would designate them as a terrorist. The whole Ummah would be against them. So why are we giving this special exception to a group of people that came, that were doing things that were very questionable, which are recorded in history and mentioned by primary sources like Ibn Bishr in Tarikh al-Najd? The only reason why we give them these excuses is because I believe nationalism. You might be surprised by this, wallahi, this my conclusion, but I believe it's because of Arab nationalism. That's the reason why these are being defended. And that's another discussion for another day, but it's actually a nationalistic thing. That's just my opinion. But I cannot see any other reason why this can be defended like this, even though they don't actually believe it, and even though we know exactly what they did, and even though if they implemented it, it would be like those takfirist groups that we spoke about. Except that you need to preserve the honor and integrity of these historical figures for nationalistic reasons, and then those nationalistic reasons spread to other countries through propagation. That there was propagation, that they were then being called now the revivers. This was all excellent work that would be killing the people, and you know. I want to know what you're talking about. What? So there is a difference between Najdism and Atharism. And that's why Salafi is too broad of a term now. If you're a Salafi, are you a quietist? Are you a Najdi? Are you a takfirist? Are you we don't even know where you are, what you are. The term now has lost meaning. You know, if you ask someone, where's Allah? And he says above the throne, okay. What do you think of Istighatha? He doesn't agree with it. Okay, no problem. What now let me ask you about birthdays of the Prophet. Okay, that's maybe something else. A fourth question, let me ask you, what do you think about Hukm بغير ما أنزل الله? That's a different question now. We're going to see what kind of Salafi we're talking about. What do you think of these Hukam? What do you think of that? There are questions that you can ask to ascertain what kind of Salafi we're talking about, but they're all different. The quietist versus this and that. But this was an important disclaimer, because a lot of people intellectually, they just lump them all together. These guys, Ahmad and Ibn Taymiyyah and the Najdis and Ibn Abdul Wahhab, they're not the same. Their contributions were different. Their ambitions were different. Ibn Taymiyyah was way more similar to Lot in his implementation of these things of the guys we spoke about before than he is to the current Najdi movement. I promise you. Maybe not Ibn Sina, definitely not Ibn Sina, but he was closest to the Ash'aris in implementation. Like, he was more of an intellectual. You know, this is you disagree with this, you disagree with this. Is Ahl Sunnah, fine. He had staunch views as well. He was a polemic, but he wasn't going to kill anyone if you claim to be a Muslim. He wasn't going to bring out his sword and actually say, "Well, take your wife and child as a slave." He was never going to start doing that. So, any questions on this? Yeah. All right.
Has this video empowered?
Okay. So, yeah, I mean, basically saying Ibn Abdul Wahhab was a terrorist. Like, Ibn Abdul Wahhab and his followers, they were terrorists. And the only reason that no one calls it out, or a few people call it out today as such, is nationalism. It is like Arab nationalism, like racism, basically. So yeah, I mean, those are strong words. I completely agree. Like, I think that our brother Mohammed Hijab is on the money with a lot of that, for sure. And you know, this is something that we see play out over and over again. You have people who are Salafi, and they think, you know, they just have a kind of whitewashed, sanitized picture of who Ibn Abdul Wahhab was, because there's a lot of propaganda that completely omits a lot of these details. But then they find out, like they go to some of these sources, like Tarikh Najd of Ibn Bishr that he mentioned, or Ibn Ghanam, and they start reading the primary sources, and they're like, oh, okay, so they're like massacring villages, they're like taking women and children as slaves, they're plundering, destroying, sieging Mecca, sieging Medina. Like these are supposed to be our heroes. Like these are the heroes of Tawheed. Like this sounds like terrorism. It is terrorism. And then they, and that's the end of it. Like that's the end of the honeymoon, or the this fantasy of Ibn Abdul Wahhab as a kind of meritorious figure historically. No, there's nothing meritorious about what he did. Like maximizing takfir and waging jihad against Muslims, like that's meritorious. Like that's someone that we have to look up to. And the Wahhabis, like their response to that is either a denialism, like no, he didn't mass takfir, he didn't wage jihad, he didn't take women and children as slaves, even though the Wahhabi historians were like proudly boasting about that fact. They'll like engage in this kind of denialism. That's one mode. And then the second mode is like, oh, but that everyone that the Wahhabis attacked were really hardcore mushriks and they deserved it. And they deserved it. Like, oh, okay. It's either one or the other, right? Either are you going to deny that he engaged in this slaughter, these massacres, and this mass takfir? Or are you going to, deny that these are mushriks? Because you want to both claim that these are the worst mushriks that deserve death, and then also try to whitewash and say that, no, Ibn Abdul Wahhab didn't engage in any kind of violence, that he wasn't authorized to do so. Anyway, or he wasn't justified in doing so. It's like a Wahhabi contradiction. So, yeah, Mohammed Hijab declaring war. And that's the thing, like when you start attacking Ibn Abdul Wahhab and calling him out, then there's no going back, really. Like there's no going back, and you just have to take the plunge. And that's why a lot of people just avoid hitting that target. They prefer, like, okay, you can talk about Madkhalis, like everyone can dump on Madkhalis, like they're a loser bunch and they're so easy to discredit because they're bootlickers. Like bootlickers are very easy to point out the hypocrisy of them, and they're not much of a challenge. But if you start going after Ibn Abdul Wahhab, that's a different beast. Like you have all these nut jobs who are going to come out of the woodwork. They're going to start takfiring you. They're going to start attacking your family. They want to cancel you. They want to destroy your life. Okay? They would kill you if they could. It's a different level when you go after Ibn Abdul Wahhab himself. But that is what is so necessary. It is so necessary to criticize the source of this cancer, which is Ibn Abdul Wahhab, and there's no respect that he should be given by anyone. Any Muslim should respect this deviant. And what Hijab is doing, by the way, when he says that, like, Ibn Taymiyyah versus Ibn Abdul Wahhab, like, that's so devastating to the Wahhabi narrative, because what the Wahhabis want to claim is that Ibn Abdul Wahhab didn't bring something new. Ibn Abdul Wahhab didn't invent something new. He was just following in the footsteps of Ibn Taymiyyah, who is so respectable and, historically was considered one of the major Hanbali scholars in the Hanbali school in terms of not only fiqh but also aqidah. So Ibn Abdul Wahhab was just a follower of Ibn Taymiyyah. When Hijab comes out, or when I came out with the Wahhabi documentary, and that was one of the main things to emphasize, is that no, there's actually a big divergence between Ibn Taymiyyah and Ibn Abdul Wahhab. There is no continuity there on these critical issues like takfir or even the concept of shirk. Like there are major divergences, and Ibn Abdul Wahhab, the scholars of his time were pointing this out. Like, hey, retard, you are misinterpreting Ibn Taymiyyah. You are perverting the teachings of Ibn Taymiyyah for your militant political purposes. You are wrong. Okay, this is what his contemporaries at the time were saying. And that's really the most devastating critique that you can give of Wahhabism as like a ideology, is that it is intellectually bankrupt. It has no continuity with the larger Islamic tradition. It is a deviant movement. It's like a reform movement. Okay, just like there are many reform movements that have come historically claiming to be, followers of the Sunnah, and they're just frauds. And Ibn Abdul Wahhab was one of these frauds. He was a reformer from the 18th century, and he used the religion for a political program to slaughter thousands, tens of thousands of Muslims. That's his legacy, and it's just been whitewashed for political purposes and because of nationalism. And if you want to claim that, but if it wasn't for Ibn Abdul Wahhab, we'd have so much shirk. There was so much shirk in Saudi. And it's because of the Wahhabis. Thank you, Wahhabis, for getting rid of the shirk. No. First of all, many of these practices historically, like extreme Sufi practices, like legit grave worshipping practices, those were addressed by many historical figures starting around the 18th century. It wasn't just limited to the Arabian Peninsula. And I gave a whole long list in the Wahhabism documentary of other revivalists who were opposing some of these extreme Sufi practices, including like Shah Waliullah in the subcontinent and elsewhere. Uthman Danfodio in Africa, so forth. You can look at the long list. And so there were other Muslims who were combating extreme Sufi practices that were falling into shirk, etc. That was going on beyond just Ibn Abdul Wahhab. That's point number one. Point number two, their opposition to it in these other regions didn't involve mass takfir. Somehow they were able to curb these wrong practices without resorting to mass takfir, without resorting to massacres, without resorting to sieging Mecca and Medina and Karbala, and without resorting to enslaving Muslim women and children. Like, they're able to combat shirk without all-out war, like this fake, false jihad. Isn't that interesting? So, yeah, all of these Wahhabi apologetics, like, they belong in the trash bin, in the garbage bin, and it's not defensible. Wahhabism, Ibn Abdul Wahhab is not defensible. I'm so happy to see that Muhammad Hijab is coming out, declaring war on this deviant movement. And so what has been the reaction? You had Rabbi Ferris coming out saying Muhammad Hijab is the new Daniel. So, yeah. And what has Rabbi Ferris said about me? That he's takfired me, basically. He's takfired me. He said that, yeah, Daniel is, if you recall, one of the first videos that Rabbi Ferris put out against me, he said that, our belief is that the Khawarij should be killed. That was back when they were accusing me of being a Khariji. Since then, they've accused me of being like a Ikhwani, Sufi, Iranian Shia agent. Like, I'm the first Khariji, Iranian, Sufi, Ikhwani agent. Like, I combine everything that the Wahhabis don't like, all in one package. Like, I'm the ultimate super soldier. Like, their worst nightmare. And he's Ikhwani, and he's Sufi, and he's Shia, and he's like, I'm all their worst things, like, in one. So he said that Daniel is a Khariji. He's a deviant, and he's a Khariji. And by the way, like, the Khawarij should be killed. The Khawarij should be killed. Like, that was his video on me. Like, one of his first videos. So now Muhammad Hijab, I guess, the implication is that Muhammad Hijab should be killed. These are the kind of threats that the implied, implicit threats of Rabbi Ferris, literally working for the UAE government. building Hindu temples and licking the boots of Benjamin Netanyahu. So, and then you had Adnan Rashid also coming out, Uncle Retard, as we call him. Hold on. He says, very interesting times we're living in. There are so-called Sunni activists out there who attack the people of Tawheed and condemn them, and two, side with the Rafida, parentheses, mushrikeen, and promote unity with them. Strange new breed of Sunnis. Okay, so what happened to, first of all, I like how he drops the pretense, because you had a point there where, I don't know, maybe he was getting a lot of scrutiny from the UK government, where he was claiming that he doesn't mass takfir the Shia. And even his buddy Fareed, Hindu temple apologist Fareed Bahraini was saying, oh, Adnan has never mass takfir the Shia, never. Okay, well, here he is saying the Rafida, i.e. mushrikeen. That's like mass takfir, I think. It sounds pretty much like mass takfir. Okay, so he's referring to Mohammed Hijab. He's too much of a coward to actually say Mohammed Hijab. He has to just imply it. So that's how cowardly. Imagine, like, what kind of a girl is this guy? What kind of a girl is Adnan Rashid? And then Hijab responded, and expand this. Says, Adnan, we are friends and we go a long way back. Despite my disagreements with you, I won't be refuting you even if you continue out of respect for yourself and your son. However, if you would like to have a friendly discussion like I did with ML, you are always welcome. So, Hijab is putting Adnan in his place, saying, behave boy, don't make me get aggressive. I'm gonna treat you with respect, but my patience has limits. Like, that's what I'm reading from this. That's what I'm reading from this. Okay, even though, like you say, even if you continue out of respect, I won't be refuting you. Well, yeah, maybe we'll see. We'll see how respectful Adnan is if he reciprocates. But I have a feeling that Adnan is not one to just take it on the chin. Okay? I think that he's too much of, he has too much insecurity to let Mohammed Hijab just body him like that. Tell him, boy, watch yourself. I think Adnan is too insecure to allow Hijab to put him in his place. So we'll see. We'll see how this develops. But from my experience with Wahhabis, like, they just don't know when to shut up. They just don't have, like, they have this kind of delusion of being so smart and having, like, the best arguments, when in reality they're the most ignorant people, and they've demonstrated it over and over and over again. They've been refuted over and over and over again. They just don't know when to quit. So that's fine for people who are not afraid to shut them up. And clearly Hijab is not afraid. So better watch out. Better watch out, Uncle Retard. So then you had a bunch of people on Twitter that began to takfir Mohammed Hijab and start insulting his lineage, like getting into racism. Just shocking stuff. They started calling him Coptic, okay, like a Coptic Christian, saying because he's Egyptian, right? Because he's Egyptian, so he's a Coptic. Just like with me, they say, oh, he's Iranian, he's Majusi. He's a Majusi mushrik. Okay, they're not even saying I'm Shia anymore. Okay, they're saying no, he's actually Majusi. He's actually a different religion. Okay, this is the kind of takfir that I was going through. They're doing the same tactics with Hijab. So then this was just shocking, like this tweet that I saw. It was quite nasty. And you know, this is Wahhabis, you know, they are nasty people. Like they are following in the footsteps of Ibn Abdul Wahhab and his teachings. Like in Ibn Abdul Wahhab in his teachings, it says that you have to show animosity towards the mushrikeen. You have to show animosity, and even if they claim to be Muslim, like they claim to be Muslim, but in fact they're mushrikeen, and in fact they're worse than the Quraysh at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. They're worse than Abu Jahl. So you have to have even more animosity towards them. So look at this Wahhabi, okay, saying to Muhammad Hijab, I am a pure Arab from the land of the Arabs and their lineage, whereas you are an African slave with no value. I am the one who conquered your country. I am the one who defeated the occupier of your country. I am the one who freed you from slavery. I am the one who taught you the Arabic language. I am the one who brought you into Islam. I am the one who has a favor upon all humanity until the day of resurrection. I am your master, and you're merely a slave. So how delusional these people are, like, imagine. They're just proving hijab right. That's all about like this kind of base nationalistic racism, like Arab supremacy, Arab superiority. Like, I brought you into Islam. Like, what? Really? You brought me to Islam? Like, I conquered your people. Like, what? You're just like a 22-year-old electronic fly sitting in Riyadh, like sitting behind a computer in Riyadh. Like, what did you conquer? Like, you're just sitting there behind a computer, you know, getting $2 an hour from MBS. Like, that's what did you conquer? You're barely able to conquer, you know, your little group of 15 followers on Twitter, but you're talking about I'm master, you're slave. So this is just shocking levels of jahiliyyah, racial ignorance, like so nauseating, so disgusting. But this is what Wahhabism produces. And you'll notice there's not a single Wahhabi who disavows or condemns this type of behavior, this type of language. Like, this is their MO. This is how they deal. You've seen how they've dealt with me, how they talk about me, how they takfir me. They attack my family. They attack my lineage. Okay, they use all this vulgar language against my family. That's Wahhabism. They're like Jeets. They're like Jeets. That's pretty much what you should consider them as. Like, isn't it ironic? Like, they claim to be so much against shirk, but they act like a bunch of Hindus. Like, they act like and they talk and they act like a bunch of Hindus online. And if it weren't for the U.S. propping them up, they'd be nothing. Like, if it weren't for the U.S. buying their oil, they would be nothing. Okay, these Wahhabis, like the Wahhabi Dawah would not exist, and already like it's on its last leg. Wahhabism is on its last leg. Already it was going out the door. Okay, because it became a political liability even in the Gulf. And now it really has no support. Like, tell me, who are the big names, like the big defenders of Ibn Abdul Wahhab in the English language, let's say? Who's the big defender? Can you tell me? Like, even though the people who are like the people who are defending Ibn Abdul Wahhab privately, like, they don't really offer much publicly in terms of a full-throated defense of Ibn Abdul Wahhab. Haven't you noticed that? Like, look at like maybe the biggest in English in terms of online dawah nowadays is Uthman bin Farouk. Okay, Uthman bin Farouk, he's not making videos on Ibn Abdul Wahhab. Not like anything of note, like that's actually responding to the strongest criticisms of people like me or Hijab or others. And we saw Uthman bin Farouk can't even debate basic issues, do you think he would debate Ibn Abdul Wahhab? Like, do you think he could actually have a debate on that with me or hijab? No chance. No chance he would be able to. So they have no one. Like, they have no one to stand up for their position, to defend their sheikh. It's like, it's over. Okay, their movement is over, and people now know the truth. Like, they know what this movement has been all about, and more importantly, they know what Ibn Abdul Wahhab was all about. Not much to say. Not much to say in terms of the future of Wahhabism. So we can celebrate, like, we can celebrate that, and I was really happy to see hijab coming out, and yeah, it's really good. The one thing that he does say that I'm kind of confused about, or I don't really understand, is he calls it Nejdism. He doesn't call it Wahhabism. He says Nejdism. And that was part of the video too. Let's play that. So I missed it.
Yeah, and only fair. And we were talking about Salafism, and he's got a massive influence on neo-Salafism and also Salafism as a whole, and Hanbalism and Atharism. That we compare him with Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, okay? Because a lot of people believe that these two figures have the same views when it comes to some of the matters. And there are some similarities between the two figures. Both of them followed the Hanbali madhab. Both of them followed Ahmad ibn Hanbal. Actually, Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab has works written on the Hanbali madhab. He does have those. No one really consults them from the Hanbali madhab, but nevertheless, he does have those words. The main
no one consults those pamphlets. no one consults, you know, that the slop, you know, that written about the Hanbali madhab from someone who doesn't even understand the basics.
Key difference, which has an impact demographically between what I like to call, was not pejorative. You know, using the term Wahhabi, even though, by the way, Albani uses this term. He says Mali al Wahhabiyya. Albani uses the term Wahhabi, and he uses it polemically. I don't like to use that term because it's a pejorative sort of term, and it alienates a lot of people. I use the term Nejdism. Okay, now the term Nejdism is because Nejd is the area in Saudi Arabia where not just Abu Wahhab, but his followers inhabited this area. And a lot of the ideas subsequent to Ibn Abdul Wahhab, who died 1792, by the way, so we're talking a good 500 years after Ibn Taymiyyah, and who was obviously instrumental in the formation of the current Saudi state. And this is a very important consideration, by the way, that him and Ibn Saud actually teamed up together and had an alliance that essentially formed the current state of Saudi Arabia, all right?
So he says Nejdism because Wahhabism is pejorative. But if you're worried, bro, if you're worried about not being pejorative, like, you just called their entire movement terrorism. like, are you really worried about being pejorative, like being insulting? Like, you just said that their movement is terrorism and it's motivated by racism. Like, that's what you said, like 10 minutes later. So I think we're beyond, like, we're beyond not being insulting. And by the way, they find Nejdism also insulting. Like, Nejdism is also insulting to them. So yeah, Wahhabism is the term to use because, you know, maybe hijab has a difference of opinion with me on this. I'm not gonna insist, like, on anything. Like, we can agree to disagree. But Nejdism is a location. Typically, you know, these movements are named after their founders, right? You know, that's generally the trend in how we describe manahij and madhahib. You know, the Shafis, the Hanafis, the Hanbalis, the Malikis, the Ash'aris, like the Maturidis, they're named after the founders, as opposed to a location. Even though there are some examples, I think, of that, like being a movement being named after a location, but it's more rare. And then the second point is that Wahhabism, like they themselves called themselves Wahhabiyya and Wahhabiyun, like that is part of their initial nomenclature for themselves, like that exists in their books. Okay, in Wahhabi books, they call themselves Wahhabiyun. So it's like a self title, and they only got rid of it, you know, in the 20th century, early 20th century, because it was like PR problem, because Wahhabis had been so thoroughly refuted and so thoroughly likened to the Khawarij that they dropped the term altogether. And this is taqiyya, like they did taqiyya, they're hiding their true identities, and they rebranded. They rebranded themselves. So that's, I think that we shouldn't allow them to do that. I think they should stick to the term or the name Wahhabi. And it's an accurate term because it identifies the source of the problem. The source of the problem is not necessarily Najd. Like the source of the problem is not the location, like anything particular to the location in Central Arabia. The problem is with the ideology, the thought, and the statements of the deviants of Ibn Abdul Wahhab. That's why it's Wahhabism. That's why they are Wahhabis. They're Wahhabis because they prioritize the teachings of Ibn Abdul Wahhab. And the name should reflect, the term that we use should reflect, it should be very immediate. Like, what is the problem? Like, what is at stake and what are we debating? We're debating not Najd, like a particular part of Arabia that has a long history, has other bad figures associated with it. The Khawarij originally are from Najd. Musaylama, the false prophet, originally from Najd, and others. But the problem with this particular group is not that territory. The problem with them is this ideology, and it doesn't matter if they're Wahhabis in Pakistan, Wahhabis in Malaysia, Wahhabis in Turkey, Wahhabis in Canada. The problem is the ideology of Ibn Abdul Wahhab. So that's my pitch for why we call it Wahhabism, and why I consciously, you know, when I started to go to war with these people, what should I call them? Like, what should I, and there was a period where I wasn't sure. Like, I don't want to use the term Salafi, because Salafi, as Hijab himself discusses, like in this clip, he says that, well, it's not clear, like, what do you mean by the term Salafi? Do you just mean that you're Athari, you follow, like, the Aqidah and the fiqh of Imam Ahmed ibn Hanbal, you really like Ibn Taymiyyah, you really, like, there's a lot of ambiguity in what the term Salafi has become. And so I 100% agree with Hijab that this is more of an ambiguous term. And if you use that pejoratively, like, that's your kind of, you know, using too broad of a net, or too wide of a net rather, and you lose some of the nuance, you lose some of the power of your critique if you use the term Salafi. And it's not fair, because not all of these Salafis have that kind of devotion to Ibn Abdul Wahhab or adopt his views on takfir, but they still consider themselves Salafi. So that's, you know, that's why I always distinguish Salafi versus Wahhabi. And with Salafis, there are many very good Salafis, and they are doing a lot of good work in terms of preserving knowledge, teaching deen, etc. Those are the Salafis, and those who tend towards Ibn Abdul Wahhab, and they promote his takfirism, they promote his kind of deviant views on shirk. Okay, then they're Wahhabis. And yeah, so I didn't want to use Salafi. What other term you can use? I think Wahhabi. Like, I settled on Wahhabi. That is the term. Even though Wahhabi, yeah, it also has one downside to it. One major downside is that Wahhabi is used by liberals, like these liberal Muslims who they consider any Muslim who is just strict on Sharia and, you know, cares about implementing Islam on a governmental level, they just brand all of them as Wahhabi. Like, so Wahhabi just means like a conservative Muslim as opposed to a liberal Muslim. Like, that's the problem with using the term Wahhabi. Like, that's a downside to it. But I've been trying a lot over the past 2 years to disambiguate and make it very clear what is the problem with Wahhabism. Like, I'm a conservative Muslim. I want Islamic government. I want to return to Khilafah. I want pan-Islamic unity. I am opposed to, you know, women's liberation and women's empowerment. I'm opposed to, you know, secularism, secularization, whatever. Like, but I'm also anti-Wahhabi because Wahhabism is a deviant 18th century movement that attempted to distort the religion and deviated from Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah. Anyway, that was just a separate point. Okay, so that is our show. I wanted to play one clip, as I promised at the beginning of the show, from this feminist. And I thought it was a laugh riot. A friend of mine, Muslim brother, sent me this clip and he said I should react to it. So let me do that. Thinking what it would feel like to be a provider.
If I broke all 4 of your limbs and I put you in a room and then I fed you with my own hands, things that only I like. I decide what you have to eat. I decide how much you have to eat. I decide what you have to wear. I decide when you get to have the window open. I decide when you get to go out on a wheelchair. And then I tell you that you should be grateful that I do so much for you. And then I tell you that you're actually a freeloader who does not have any means to survive without me. What would you say to me then? What would you think of me then?
So, do you catch that?
Imagine if
So, imagine what it would feel like to be a provider. You break someone's limbs and you put them in a wheelchair. You put them in a room. Decide what you're going to eat, what you're going to wear, where you're going to go out. Imagine that. And then you call him a freeloader. Okay, so this is like, and I'm listening to this clip, like this short clip. I'm just shocked. I find it hilarious. Okay, because even in her imagined caricature of patriarchy, like the evil patriarchy, the intolerable evil patriarchy, even in that caricature that she's painting for us, the person, like the woman, is still a freeloader. Is still a freeloader. Notice how in her caricature, the prisoner, it does what? All the prisoner is doing is eating and getting dressed and going out. That's even so that prisoner is just a freeloader in that scenario as well. What happened to, so this is the point that I'm making, like contrast with the earlier feminists, okay, in history. Like when they put out their caricature of the evil patriarchy, you know, it's usually like this is, oh, the woman, she is slaving over a hot stove, cooking the meals morning, noon, and night, taking care of children. She's barefoot and pregnant. She's just like a baby-making machine. No rights, no choice. She's just slaving day and night, cooking for him, cleaning for him. And then she presents, you know, the bowl of soup to her overbearing tyrant of a husband. Oh, here, honey, have some soup. Drink some of this soup. And then he tastes it. And then he takes the bowl of boiling soup and he throws it at her face. There's not enough salt in this soup. And he starts beating her and punching her. Why did you undersalt my soup, you stupid beep, beep, beep. Like that's the feminist caricature, is it not? Traditionally, when they characterize the enslavement of women, like that's the fantasy, the torture fantasy that they portray, okay? But contrast it with the new wave of feminists, the new TikTok feminists, okay? The previous feminists, the women are actually doing stuff. The women are actually cooking and cleaning and raising children, having children. Now, the new feminists, they don't even include that. The torture, okay, the torture from the TikTok feminist perspective is, oh, you know, you get to eat, but you don't have 100% choice on what it is that, you know, you order from Uber Eats. You don't get 100% options, 100% choice about like what clothes, you know, you get to buy and order, and you don't get 100% like your husband has some say in that, given that he's paying for it all. Or like when he takes you out for vacation, or for a vacation, for a holiday, or for a restaurant, you know, you don't get, he's the one who is the main decider of that. You don't get the full choice and autonomy to choose how to spend his money. That's like being a prisoner. That's like being the worst. That's the worst kind of hell that I can imagine. Like that's how pampered these TikTok feminists are. That is their vision of hell, where you're getting fed, you're getting, you know, clothed, you're getting taken out, you're getting wined and dined basically. But you don't have like 100% decision making power. That's hell on earth. Can we go back to the old school feminists that were talking about like slaving over a stove and cooking meals? Can we go back to that? Can we go back to that image? Like that was more respectable. That was more respectable, like for the patriarch. Like the patriarch could, you know, kind of hold his head up high and say, yeah, you know, that's the way that's what we should aspire to. Now, like according to the feminist dystopia, this image of a hellhole, patriarchal hellhole that they're painting for us, the man is a simp. In the caricature, okay, of a tyrant, he's actually a simp. So this is a disaster. This is a disaster. They're continuously downgrading what it means to be a patriarch, what it means to be an overbearing tyrant. It's constantly being downgraded. Like what happened to throwing the hot soup and smashing the dishes and letting loose? You know, of course, I don't agree with that. Just joking. I don't agree with beating women black and blue. I don't agree. Obviously, I agree with the concept of spousal discipline that the Sharia allows, that Islam allows. Obviously, that's necessary and important, but it has limitations. It has boundaries. Okay, you can't just throw hot soup in your wife's face and punch her and beat her. That's completely disallowed, haram, prohibited. Don't do it. Shouldn't even be joking about that. But I'm just making a point about, you know, the caricature. The feminist caricature has really devolved. So that's my reaction to TikTok feminists. Well, there'll be more. Like these TikTok feminists are the worst cancer. Like we thought we had it bad with, I don't know, the sheikhas, and now like they're not even sheikhas. They're not even claiming to be sheikhas or ustazas. And they're just releasing the most garbage takes. It needs to be a response. So if you enjoy that, if you enjoy my reactions to these feminists, let me know in the comments so that do more of it. Or you can tip me off anything that needs to be responded to. All right, guys, that is the show. Now I want to look at your super chats. See what you have to say on the topic. Abdullah says, I guess it's better late than never for hijab. Wish you was around when you were fighting alone and attacked. At least you got credit for leading on this when everyone else was too afraid. Yeah, like I said, I'm glad that hijab is, you know, in this. And look, people don't always know. Like, people don't, like, I didn't know. Like, people who have been refuting Wahhabism, there are many people who have critiqued and refuted Wahhabism before me, you know. And, like, I didn't know the facts. I had to learn it for myself. I had to come to my own conclusions. And hijab has come to his own conclusions. He's done, you know, done research. He has read in depth more of these documents, historical documents, and he's come to his conclusions. And now he's in the fight, and we support him, and we're happy about that. So, Abdullah says, just came from Mohammed Hijab live stream. He was talking about the recent Nejdi meltdown. I think things are kind of going in the right direction. Allah knows best. Yeah, I think it's good. It's very much in the right direction. Ayan, thank you for the super chat. Lord Meisland says Lebanon fired rockets on Israel 55 minutes ago. Yeah, I mean, this is what I was talking about. Like, what chance is there for this memorandum of understanding to be realized for a final agreement after 60 days if Israel is just going to continue to attack not only Beirut, but also southern Lebanon, but also Gaza, increasing the settlements in the West Bank? Another from Abdullah. Do you think excluding Gaza from the deal suggests that Iran isn't in such a strong position to be able to dictate all the terms, but rather willing to settle for a compromise? Yeah, maybe that's what is indicated, that Iran isn't as in strong of a position as people think. But when I look at just the kind of leverage control of the Strait of Hormuz will bring Iran, like, yeah, it's gonna be difficult to hold that. It's gonna be difficult. It's gonna come with a lot of pain, but that's like the cost of going against the US and Israel. Like, you're going to have to go through a lot of pain, but it's a period of pain and then relief. It's a period of pain and then victory. And might as well just rip the Band-Aid off. Like, that's the kind of mentality. Like, that's the approach. Like, rip the Band-Aid off all at once instead of this kind of slow approach, a kind of approach that is very similar to strategic patience, where it's more risk averse. Like, it's less risky, but it's less risky on its face, but on a long enough time scale, big risks arise because things change geographically in terms of different countries' involvement, your own domestic political situation, the economy, and so on a long enough time scale. Like, that's what Israel and the US are banking on, that Iran is going to face some kind of difficulty or weakness that is going to present an opportunity for another strike. And you don't know how things are going to turn out after that strike. Like, might not be so fortunate. So better to rip off the Band-Aid now, get it over with now, get the maximum that you can out of the situation now, as opposed to risking problems down the line. Like, that's the logic. End sentence, next line, please, says, welcome back, bro Daniel. Looks like we gotta dust off the responses to feminist slop. Seems it will increase since conservatives have been pretty awful overall. They gave up their moral authority. Yeah, with the whole red pill movement and a lot of these, even someone like Andrew Tate, who has thrown his lot in with Israel and his Israeli tech teams, and just being an overall disappointment, overall disgusting caricature, and also the fact that he got brutally beat down in a boxing match by an amateur boxer and lost all his aura, lost all his manhood to that situation, a guy in pink boxing gloves. So, those were the red pill leaders, right? But given that they have been proven to be frauds and grifters and charlatans, now that boosts the feminist movement. So we need to have a new wave, a new generation of feminist critique, and hopefully it's going to be a critique that's more in line with Islam, and it's going to be more effective, inshallah. Unrelated, who are you rooting for in the World Cup? I haven't watched any World Cup yet. I guess I'm rooting for Iran. I guess I'm gonna just go with the home team. I'm going to go with Iran. Sorry, like, don't have a more sophisticated answer for you, but I heard about the US, like, being so petty and not allowing the Iranian national team to stay in the US. Like, they have to stay in Mexico and have to fly in for the matches. That's so petty from the US. But yeah, Iran gonna support the homies. But I was watching the finals, the NBA finals. I haven't been watching NBA in a long time. Basketball. I like basketball. I play basketball. I have played basketball throughout my youth. Now I'm an old man. I'm still, like, playing in the geriatric leagues of basketball. But yeah, I was thinking the Spurs would win, and there were some rumors that, oh, Wembenyama, Wemby is Muslim. Like, that's what some people were telling me. Sneeko told me no, he's not a Muslim, or he was saying some other stuff about Wemby. So yeah, but I was shocked. The Spurs got really it wasn't a sweep, right? The Spurs won one game, so it was like a gentleman's sweep, you know, a very respectful sweep. Let them win one game, but then you sweep them away. And that 29 point, there was game 4 where they came back, the Knicks, 29 points down, and to come back and win off of a tip, like barely getting his fingers on the ball. What's his face? What's his name? I don't even know the players' names, all of them. So that was a crazy play. I really like basketball, and so that was exciting. But one of the things I don't like about the new era of basketball, though, is that there's not the same level of animosity between teams. Like, there's not a true rivalries where you can say, oh, they really hate each other. Like, that's what makes sports fun and interesting. Like, when there's real conflict, like, they really hate each other. I want to see them go at it. And that hasn't existed very much in the NBA, like in the 90s era, or even the early 2000s with with the Lakers, with Kobe and Shaq. So it kind of makes it less interesting, less exciting. And also the style of basketball is different now than in the 90s, early 2000s. You had triangle offense that the Bulls had, obviously, with Phil Jackson, Michael Jordan, and Phil Jackson took it to the Lakers. Triangle offense is interesting. It's exciting. You get into more of this three-point shooting era with Steph Curry. You have, so many possessions that just end up with jacking up threes. And the shooting range of players has just extended so far. Like, it's shocking how from such long distances people can shoot now and consistently make it at 40% a clip. Like, that's changed basketball, how basketball is played. But it's less interesting. Like, there's less variation when you just run like pick and roll, pick and pop, like for the three-pointer, like drive and kick out, drive and kick out, drive and kick out. It's like less interesting than post up, get in the post, make a move at the key, get into the lane, spin out, mid-range jumper, fadeaway jumper. Those kinds of offensive plays are not really taken because of Moneyball, basically. Moneyball and the determination that three-pointers are just so much more efficient. Like, having more attempted three-pointers is going to lead to a certain increase in the percentage of like your win rate. So you're just playing Moneyball. That means just jacking up threes. So that's like an old school critique of the new game, new style of basketball. But I think the viewership also might reflect the fact that people are less excited. I don't know. DJ Saima says, brother, before you, nobody had the guts to speak up against the Wahhabis, not even brother Hijab. Your work has been groundbreaking. You're truly inspirational. May Allah bless you and protect your family and give your mother a Jannah. I mean, thank you. That's very generous of you. Groundbreaking. I mean, it was just work that we did all together. It's not just me. All of you also were very active in the comments and the replies of these videos against these Wahhabis, the Clippers. Okay, we're not talking about basketball anymore. I'm not talking about the LA Clippers. I'm talking about the MuslimSkeptic Clippers who are putting out this material. So it was a group effort. We all worked together and we all confronted this, and alhamdulillah, the results speak for themselves. So may Allah reward all of you. John Bolton Please invite Elijah Magnier to talk about the war deal. I'm not sure who that is. I'll check it out. Lord Meislin says, where's the Muslim Skeptic merch? Streets in need. Yeah, inshallah, we're going to have some merch. I just have to set up the site, I guess. I've never sold merch before, but we have a really nice hoodie, a Muslim Skeptic hoodie. And I gifted one to Sneeko because I was in New York last month with Sneeko, and we had a good time in New York, and gave him a nice hoodie, Muslim Skeptic hoodie. So we'll have more of that, inshallah. But definitely join the newsletter, because the people on the newsletter, that's where I'm gonna first do the first blast of advertisement for the merch. So, and we have a limited stock. So the first batch, I guess, if you want it, just sign up to the newsletter so you get first dibs. Nice says, last debate with that pro-Israeli, I asked him how they take Iran over if beating them is impossible. He said, take Kharg 30919. He doubled down, I'm buying books. Okay, I'm not sure what that means. Take Kharg Island, like that's not gonna allow you to defeat Iran. And the US came to the same conclusion. So that guy you're talking about, his name is Nick Matau. I debated him, like he's a complete idiot. So the idea that supporting Israel lets USA control Muslims and oil doesn't make much sense today. IRA, modern warfare, has shown that even powerful nations can't easily control entire populations. So cost mo. Not sure what that means. Yeah, but you're right. It's because of modern warfare and asymmetric warfare, countries like the US, the superpowers, have much more difficulty. And you can also, the same is the case with Russia and Ukraine. Russia is not able to really have a decisive victory against Ukraine because Ukraine is using drone warfare and a lot of these tactics. Asymmetric warfare against Russia. Goosebumps says, the rising hadith rejection and Muslim feminism on social media is so scary, man. And these posts get so many likes, it actually worries me a little. Yeah, we have work to do. We have work to do on these other social platforms. So I got to get my act together. Start putting out content. Lord Meislin says, my soup better have enough salt or else. Yeah, that's nothing worse than under-seasoned food, is it not? It's pretty much the worst, so. Discourse says, please look up CIA TI program, Muslims being tortured. Yeah, that was revealed like 10 years ago. The kind of torture program that the CIA had, advanced interrogation techniques is what they called it. Jamal Jones, wa alaikum assalam. Akhi, may Allah bless you. Glad you're back. Thank you, bro. Appreciate your warm welcome and your super chat. Let's see. How about the regular chat? Might as well take a look. You guys are talking about British food? Brother Labib is here, our moderator. He's saying anti-Wahhabi merch. Yeah, if you have ideas for anti-Wahhabi merch, we can put that out. Daniel, please make dua that I get my degree. May Allah grant you whatever is good for you, including a degree. Ameen. Chat is not popping, not gonna lie. Dan, can you do lives watching the World Cup? I don't think that's allowed, actually, because isn't like you can get. I can't stream any of the games and watch them. Like that's gonna be copyright struck. Daniel, do you have any opinion on the Muslim Lantern video about women in Dawah? Yeah, I was hearing about some of this controversy about women in Dawah. And depending, I can't say that I was on one person's side or another person's side because I don't know what everyone was articulating exactly. And I don't want to recreate their positions and potentially misrepresent them. But as far as like women in Dawah, if you mean like women who are going to give Dawah to other women, or they're just like, it's like a generalist type of Dawah, like they're just speaking on Islam generally as Muslim women, as long as you're maintaining modesty, I don't see anything that's necessarily wrong with that. And as I've explained before, like it might be even necessary specifically to oppose feminism, because a lot of Muslim women, they just won't understand unless it's explained to them by another woman, like another Muslim woman. And that's why, like, my wife Khalid, like, I allow her to do that kind of dawah against feminism for that purpose. Like, it's a very pragmatic purpose. It's the need of the hour, and that's something permissible for her to do, and it is praiseworthy for her to do, and may Allah reward her for that. So that's where I stand on like the general idea of women in dawah. However, if you mean like women in dawah in terms of like women in aggressive debates and like debating men specifically, like I don't think that that's appropriate. Like I'm not gonna say it's haram. I'm not gonna say that this is prohibited in Islam. I'm not gonna make any kind of ruling like that. I'm not a mufti. I'm not like in a position to make a statement like that. But does it like go against femininity? Yeah, it goes against femininity. It becomes an imitation of men, and that's not like that's something that is already happening at such a wide scale around the world and within the Muslim societies, of women imitating men in seeking power, seeking education, seeking positions of leadership. Like that, all of that is imitation of men. And we know that Allah has cursed the woman who imitates a man and a man who imitates women. Like this, it's something that brings Allah's curse. And the imitation, like when you're women are trying to be more and more like men in these things, like being aggressive and debating, being aggressive and like arguing online and doing that, that's a manly thing. Like that's a masculine thing. Women shouldn't be imitating that. Muslim women shouldn't be imitating that. It becomes a matter of imitation that could be problematic. It could be, something disliked, objectionable in Islam. So I think, isn't that like obvious? Like, isn't that something like I didn't understand the controversy on that. And sometimes controversies are just a matter of people talking past each other and not really understanding what the other side is saying. And that's why I didn't want to like specifically respond to one person or the other, because I haven't dedicated time to carefully understand what each side is saying, because I've been writing the book. I've been writing my book. I haven't been, other than every now and then peeking on Twitter to see what the news is. I haven't really been following these controversies. Anything else, guys? Daniel, the TI program is the modern MK Ultra program. They're doing mind control by transmitting microwaves with satellites, directed energy weapons. That's the torture I meant. Okay. We'll look into that. What do I think about Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump trying to buy those islands or the island in Albania, Sazan Island? Yeah, it was a great response from the Albanians. MashaAllah. Albanians holding it down, Muslim brothers and sisters, standing on business, as they say, and not allowing, more of the tribe incursion into Muslim lands. Lord Meislin is saying I tweet more than Elon. What do you mean? I average less than 10 tweets a day. It's less than 10, so I don't know what you're talking about. It's quite reserved, because I only like to speak in a meaningful way. You'll find no extra fat on my Twitter account because I only tweet things that are very pertinent and beneficial. No slop from my account. When is the podcast with Sheikh Asrar Rashid and Dr. Morandi? Whenever they want. Whenever they want. Like, it's been an open invitation. Actually, with Dr. Morandi, I haven't actually... I emailed him, but I think his email was not working. So I need to get a better contact and email him. Then maybe I can talk to him. Maybe Sneeko has his... Or Sneeko definitely has his contact. I can get it from him. But his email wasn't working. With Sheikh Asrar, I don't know. Sheikh Asrar said he was busy or he couldn't do it. So maybe he's less busy nowadays. Daniel, you're going to Dagestan 2 to 3 years, inshallah. Can do that. Get good. Get some skills. Am I debating God Logic in July? Yes, inshallah, in Dallas. Being sponsored by Modern Day Debates. You can go and get tickets for that. Is Sneeko controlled opposition and a plant? No. No, I don't think so. He's controlled opposition calling for like Muslim unity. That's exactly what Israel wants and the US wants. Israel wants Muslims to be united and stronger than ever. That's why Sneeko is a plant. And that's why I'm a plant, actually. Dan, did you see Sean Strickland's situation with a fan sneaking him into the UFC? Yeah, he was banned. He was banned from the White House UFC fight. Like, how crazy is that? Like, Trump has really degraded the station of the White House. Like, supposed to be the White House, like, basically it's the same place where Abraham Lincoln and, the great presidents, Eisenhower and FDR and Teddy Roosevelt, all of these great American icons, presidents, all these historic speeches, all these historic monumental events in American history. And now it's just, a lawn for an arena for two guys to be beating the piss out of each other, punching themselves. Yeah, that's what America has become. That's a good microcosm of the state of the nation. Yeah, the whole country is like devolving, by the way. Update on the downfall of the United States from the inside. Like last week, okay, just in the random part of the day, okay, in the afternoon, sunny weather, the power goes out. the power goes out. So you fans of Haqiqatjou know how annoying that is. And it usually happens when I'm trying to stream something or I'm trying to record something or I really need my computer. That's what happened. Like last Thursday, the power goes out. And it's just so annoying. Because no power, and it doesn't last. It lasts for 5 hours, so it's not like just a brief brownout because of the grid overloading of the grid. No, it's 5 hours. We have no power. So, just the infrastructure is collapsing in the U.S. Yeah, and the weather is hot. Like, it's hot summer weather. And the power goes out. You can't even turn on a fan. Sounds like you need solar with battery. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I can get a generator. I can get, like, other power supply, but it's just another headache. All love, Daniel. I didn't mean to insult you or Sneeko. It's just that Sneeko is too good to be true. Yeah, I get it. Sometimes we just are trained to be pessimistic. Like, we can't recognize a good thing. The same way. I'm the same way, bro. Are you gonna do... Oh, bro, that's amateur stuff. In Pakistan, we have sometimes like 3 days power outages. Yeah. So, I mean, we've had like 5-day power outages in the U.S. I'm not in a small city. I'm one of the biggest cities in the U.S. It's not like I'm living on a farm. So, yeah, I mean, we're basically Pakistan and the United States in terms of the health of our infrastructure. Same level. Same level. That's great news for Pakistan. It's great news for the rest of the world. So I'm happy from that aspect. But it also means that, you know, our situation not that comfortable. Are you gonna do a stream on the far right in the UK? How should Muslims react? Yeah, I'm gonna hopefully do some content on that in the future. Things are just evolving. Like, there are protests happening constantly now against immigrants. Like, it's reaching a boiling point. I had a friend who went to this Republican convention in the US, and he was just shocked by the amount of anti-Muslim sentiment that he saw at this convention. And he thought it was like things are reaching a boiling point, like a crisis point. So yeah, it's just it's a function of the economy. The economic situation is deteriorating, and people are falling into below the poverty line. And the natural reaction is to direct your frustration on the out group. In this case, it's going to be immigrants. And with Muslims, it's even worse because we're not only racially different than the majority population in the West, we're also religiously different. So we make the perfect scapegoat. So you're going to see a lot more animosity. And the point that I've been making, if you followed Haqiqatjou for the past years, is that we need a new narrative. Like, we need a way to address this anti-immigrant narrative that also is not just the regurgitation of leftist Democrat Party lines or Labor Party lines. Like, that narrative has been discredited, and it's not going to be effective against this new wave of bigotry or racism or anti-immigrant statement. Like, we have to have a new strategy, and we can't rely on the Democrats. The Democrats and the left wing, they will throw us under the bus. They've already begun to throw us under the bus. They will co-sign the populist narrative, the anti-immigrant narrative, once they realize that it'll win them elections. And as the whole population becomes more and more populist and nationalistic, they're going to be able to get a lot of political capital off of signaling against immigrants and signaling against Muslims. And historically in the US, that's been the case. Like, Democrats have a long history, the left wing has a long history of signaling against Muslims. When it comes to even Barack Obama. Like, Barack Obama had many anti-Muslim statements in his presidency. And so that's not something new. But what the Muslims have done, especially over the past 10 years, is we put so much loyalty to the Democratic Party, especially in the US. You had imams literally campaigning for Democratic candidates. You had the whole support, all of this Muslim support for Ilhan Omar, Bernie Sanders. You had religious conventions like ICNA, where they're bringing on these left-wing Democratic politicians, raising money for them, campaigning for them. You had literally compassionate imams, like someone like Omar Suleiman is campaigning for Bernie Sanders, like on the campaign trail, or Beto, or whatever politician, left-wing politician. And what has been gained with all of that, snuggling with the left wing? What has been bought? What has been gained? What has been actually, what kind of political capital have Muslims benefited from selling out to the Democrats over these past 10 years? There's been no benefit. There's been no dividends. There hasn't been any kind of return on investment. Meanwhile, we had to throw our community into the pit of feminism, the pit of liberalism, the pit on LGBT. Basically turned an entire generation of Western Muslims into these libtard cucks. And it's bought us nothing, like no political capital, no political goodwill. These Democrats, the Labor Party, very willing to throw us under the bus as soon as it becomes inconvenient. So congrats. Like, that was your political gamble that really paid off. Yeah. But I mean, we have to start being smart, like, and start being willing to be confrontational, fight for what's right, fight for ourselves as Muslims. And if we're not, like, the reaction to this anti-Muslim sentiment, anti-immigrant sentiment, like, if the reaction is the same old of, oh, who are we going to ally with? Oh, maybe we need to donate more money to the Democratic Party. Oh no, like, if that's the reaction, that's the knee-jerk response, it's going to be bad times. Like, we're just sitting ducks, basically. Because what they're saying, like, what these Republicans are saying, is that we need to get rid of the Muslims. Like, these protests that are happening, these riots that are happening in Ireland or the UK, what are they saying? They want to kick out the Muslims. They want to kick out the Muslims. They want to burn down the masajid. And I don't see any sense of urgency from the so-called Muslim leaders. Like, what's the urgency? Just, oh, we need to vote harder. We need to vote harder for one of the two parties. Or, like, we need to issue a fatwa that voting is fard. Like, it is wajib for you to go and vote. Like, unfortunately, like, that's the level of thinking that we have in our community. Anyway. Okay, guys. So that's our show. It's been almost 3 hours. I have another piece of content, a good interview that's coming out later this week. You're going to enjoy it. I really enjoyed it. I'm talking with a Muslim brother. I'm not going to reveal who it is. Someone new that I haven't talked to before on the channel. And it's an in-depth interview, over 2 hours, and we get into the weeds on a lot of interesting issues that you'll be keen to watch and benefit from, inshallah. So stay tuned. Later this week, it's coming out. And then maybe next week I'll do another show, inshallah. Let's see if I have time. When can you expect regular shows again? Once I finish this book. Once I finish it, that might be, let's say, tentatively, like around August. Around August, inshallah, I can say that we'll be back to regular shows. I'll still do periodically these shows, so that I'm not completely cut off from you guys. But if you're talking about regular you know, multiple times a week, 3 times a week at least, then I'm thinking it's going to be towards August, inshallah. So not that far away, right? Not that far away. That gives me about a month and a half to finish the book. I should be able to do it in that amount of time, inshallah. Just make dua that I am able to complete it and that it's a success. Really appreciate your duas. And it'll also be available for you to download and eventually get a hard copy as well. Okay, guys, that is our show. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to subscribe to the newsletter. As I said, the newsletter is now a good resource for you. Like, for example, some people don't have the time to watch a 3-hour live stream. They just want the highlights. They just want to read something really quick. Skim it. Get the information that they need, and if they want further insights, they can tune in. The newsletter provides that. The newsletter provides that, so it's a good resource for you. Make sure to subscribe to it. The link is in the description below. That is our show. Inshallah, we will see you on the next one. Jazakumullah khairan for all of you watching and contributing to the chat, and especially the super chatters. Really appreciate it. And a shout out to the moderators. I know I saw Brother Labib. I see Muslim Boogeyman. How's it going, bro? Really appreciate all of our moderators who take the time to listen to me yap for 3 hours. And all the clippers, too. They also have to listen to me yap. So I appreciate that from all you bros. And we'll catch you on the next one. Bi-idhnillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.